Traditionally, the way to motherhood would go a little something like this. Boy meets girl. Next, okay, boy and girl date. By the way, I drew these, I'm pretty tickled about this. Boy and girl get married. Boy and girl buy a house. Have a baby and live happily ever after. Listen. It didn't look right higher north, you guys, okay? Leave me alone. So, my story goes a little more like girl meets boy, girl dates boy, girl gets pregnant, and the relationship is so toxic she leaves. And repeat that one more time. And then it went a little bit like girl meets boy, girl dates boy, things were toxic, we're done. Okay. More recently, it was girl meets boy, girl dates boy, they get married, have a baby, and now we're this big happy family. So, it's pretty great, yeah. So now I have 3 beautiful children, an incredibly loving and supportive husband, and our lives are hectic. And that's with 3 kids. Corey has 5. He knows hectic more than I do. But I give you this vignette of my life so that, for starters, you understand that I have some extra stress than normal, having kids outside of marriage and that whole situation. But also, because I want you to know that when I tell you what I'm going to tell you tonight, I know the struggle, okay? I'm not going to sit there and say, I've got these awesome parents that watch my kids every weekend, and, we've got one perfect little child who never does anything wrong. Nope, that is not where I'm coming from in this, guys. And if you knew my household. And before we get too far into this, fellas, people who don't have kids, single ladies out there, this is also for you. You will find something useful in it, I promise. So, I want to start by looking at one of my favorite women in the Bible, a woman who has no name, but we know everything about her pretty much. So, I want to talk about the wife of noble character. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because you guys are going to glaze your eyes over after the 20 verses that it talks about her. But I want to just highlight a few verses here and there. And so in Proverbs 31, verse 11, it begins by the author detailing some of her qualities. And it says about her that her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. And that she brings him good, not harm, all the days of his life. The next thing that we see about her is just how hard she works. So in verse 13 it starts, she selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family and portions for her female servants. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard. So all of these that I just read focus so much on her family, right? She's working with eager hands. And listen, I don't know the last time I worked with eager hands. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. It is more like pulling teeth or something. Also, my husband gets up and goes to work at 5 a.m. He always has. And this girl right here is not getting up while it's still dark to make him breakfast. I'm just not doing it. He goes out and buys his own lunch. I'm not doing all that. And I know it sounds a little silly of me, but it's true. I am not like this woman in that regard. So we know that she's really killing it in life. I'm just going to say that much. So then I want to go on to verse 28. It says, her children arise and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praises her. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. So what I love most about the wife of noble character, about these verses, first of all, just a quick tidbit, my husband reads this to me every night. So I got a good one. So whenever I say I don't have these qualities, he sees them. I just am mean to myself sometimes. Anyways, all of these are great qualities. She's working hard for her husband. She's working hard for her children. She's just killing it, especially for the time. Just absolutely killing it. But to me, that last little bit was so important because it says, a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. And that was the least that was said, but also the loudest thing that was said. So I wanted to talk more about parenthood. God calls us into the role of parenthood in order to glorify his name. Perfection, even though it seems like this wife of noble character really has it perfect, perfection is not the ultimate goal. And I know that because Mary left her son, yes, we're talking about Jesus' mother, Mary, left her son at a temple, forgot about him. She left the Son of God at a temple and didn't realize till they were halfway home, and we're not talking your 5-minute drive to church. Nope, it was a few days or weeks, whatever the time frame was. So I know that the goal is not perfection. The goal is balance. And if we look back to the wife of noble character, we see all of this balance in her life, right? She is balancing life with her husband, life with her children, life as a woman in general. She is balancing all of this with her relationship with God. So, looking at that, I would say that the goals are, well, part of the goals are, love and follow God, raise children in the way they should go, and honor your spouse. That's what I get out of what I read to you. It sounds simple when you put it into words. But the truth is, we all have so much noise happening. We've got ball games, and gosh, if anybody does practices 3-4 days a week plus ball games, like, I don't know, that's too much for me anymore. But on top of that, you have just commuting, and you have work schedules and school schedules, and like I myself am a full-time student with students, and like it is a lot. It is so much happening that it's hard to focus where you need to be, and you just get stuck in autopilot. So, speaking of autopilot, let's look at whatever this verse is, because I forgot it already. Just kidding. Luke 10, starting in verse 38. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. So she came to the Lord and she asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work myself? Tell her to help me. So Jesus responds to her, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her. So Jesus is literally sitting right in front of them, and he's saying, I'm here for this relationship. And we have Mary, who is willing to just sit there and forget about everything else that's happening, while Martha is your traditional Southern mama. She is, and y'all who laughed have a Southern mama or are a Southern mama. I don't, but like, I know, she's in there like cleaning light switches and making sure that her trash can in her bathroom, the bottom of it is clean, because apparently that's something people are going to do is look, Southern mamas all over the place. But she is so distracted by everything that's going on. But so are we. We are distracted. And I don't mean because you're using your cell phone. I don't mean because of some habit that you formed. In general, we are distracted. we're having to be parents. We're having to be friends with people and have relationships with people while also having a relationship with God. We have to find that time to have our quiet time. We have to have find the time to sit down and console our friends. All these things just taking up our time constantly. We might as well be riding our little unicycles across a tightrope, juggling chainsaws, and apparently your hair's on fire for some reason. I don't know. And so you're just trying to pat your head, get your hair off fire, but the other things still exist, right? And you would think when we realize how important a relationship with our Creator is, that it would be easier to forget about the chainsaws and to put the unicycle down. We're just going to walk across the tightrope. It's fine. But the truth is there are always things in the way. It doesn't matter how many things you compartmentalize. There's always something in the way of having a relationship with God. And don't hear me say your kids are in the way. Don't hear me say that. We are in our own way. But on top of the schedule demands, on top of the physical demands, we also have these spiritual demands too. And one thing I want you to hear right now is that your household is the biggest ministry, the most important ministry work you will ever do. What is happening inside your household is your ministry. And when you're walking with God, spiritual warfare is prevalent. Satan does not want your ministry to succeed. He wants you to forget about what you're doing for your kids and your husband. He wants you to forget about your relationship with God because that's how you serve Satan and not God. So, for me, Satan attacks me by making me feel incapable to parent my children. He makes me feel inadequate as a wife. And you guys heard it whenever I first started speaking about the wife of noble character. I said that wasn't me, and that's a lie. So I have a daughter. For those of you who don't know, she has a very rare disorder, so rare we've seen about 20 some odd specialists. We have done Lord knows how many prayer circles. I don't know how many people have laid their hands on her and prayed over her, anointed her head. I don't know how many doctors and how many tests. It has been so much. And these episodes that she has because of her disorder are painful. And they're unmanageable. And when my daughter looks at me and says, "I just wish God would take this from me," I have to ask God why he would put me as her mother, because I'm not qualified to handle that. I'm not qualified to get her through that situation. I don't know what to do. And so Satan is making me feel that way because God called me to be her mother. God qualified me to be her mother, right? But it's just one of the ways that he gets to me. So, since I was vulnerable with you guys, I would like to ask you guys to be vulnerable with me for a minute. Would you just raise your hand if you have ever felt unworthy to be in your calling? Yeah. Would you raise your hand if you've ever felt incompetent when carrying out your mission? Yep. What about incapable of using your gifts to honor God? The more my adversary makes me feel this way, the more our adversary makes us feel this way, the further we get from our calling and from our Creator. So now we look at, we're balancing kids, we're balancing marriage, we're balancing other family relationships, we're balancing friendships, works, Spiritual warfare is now a thing. And we have to be close to God through all of this. And I say have to because try doing it without God, and that's what got you here, right? Because that's what got me here. So how are we supposed to find success in all of this? For me, the very first step was being intentional. Being intentional about having quiet time, even if it's only a few minutes. Being intentional about putting my phone down, even if it's just for a few minutes. Honestly, most of my prayer time happens in my car. I mean, I drive an hour plus to school in the mornings. My car is where I'm doing all of my relationship stuff in the mornings. Or even before I go to bed every night, I have made it a point, when my head is on that pillow, I do not close my eyes until I say, God, thank you for this day at least. If I don't say anything else, I'm at least going to tell him thank you for letting me be his servant on this earth one more day. Being intentional about having that face-to-face conversation with your kids. Being intentional about having that conversation that you've been putting off with your spouse. Being intentional was the first step for me. The next thing was integrating relationships. And what I mean by this, as I already told you guys, my husband reads to me every single night. Almost every single night. I can't lie to y'all. Almost every single night. And he does it without me asking. So we also do Bible reading plans together. And that doesn't mean we sit down, because we're busy. We don't sit aside 2 hours every night to do a Bible study together, but we do it by ourselves, and then we come together and talk about it. Honestly, some of my favorite conversations about my Bible reading come from my marriage. So we have this relationship where we do this together. And on top of that, we also have devotionals that we do with our kids. So my older kids pick words for the year, and we try to tailor what we read with them by what their word for the year is. And so this year, I've been more intentional about, we all have the same Bible app, so me and my kids will separately do a devotional. And then, integration, praying together. If you ever see my children sit down to eat with us, there's a good chance that just naturally it'll be Chandler or Molly almost every time. We'll start praying because that's what we do. We pray together. And just a side story on that one, when my daughter was, I believe it was her 7th birthday, my middle child came home from his dad's house and he said, I don't believe that God is real. And I said, okay, let's talk about that. And we had this big, long conversation. And I'm very realistic whenever I'm talking to my children. I'm not going to be like, you have to believe because I believe. Like, I'm going to give them reasons as to why I believe God's real. And that night, after we got home from my daughter's birthday dinner, my son said, I hate that I said I didn't believe in God. I feel really bad for that. And my darling little 7-year-old daughter said, hey, do you want to go pray with me? And she took him upstairs and led him through prayer. So we are very naturally integrating things. And that way, we are teaching each other and we're growing together as a family, which actually brings me to this. When my husband and I had all of our issues, he read a ton of books, did a ton of devotionals, and this is one of my favorite things that he got from it. So what we have here is referred to by 100 different names. I'm going to refer to it as the triangle of marriage. And so it might be self-explanatory, but it might not. The husband is on one end of the triangle, the wife is on the other. And this also goes for your children too, just FYI. And the closer that the husband and the wife grow to God, the closer they grow to each other naturally. And we really implement that in our household because we've seen it happen. When my husband and I got together, I was the spiritual leader of our home, and things went awry very quickly. So when he finally saw for himself why it was important for him to be the spiritual leader, that's when things began to grow. And that's why my husband reads to me every night. The last ingredient for success and balance is finding your community. And I know we get up here every week and we harp on groups. There's a reason for it. We don't like wasting our breath. We aren't just like, hey, you know it would be really funny if we really annoyed everybody by talking about groups every week. No, that's not what we're doing. No, we know it works. We know that it is so critical for you to find other like-minded believers, for you to be in multiple friendships that are God-honoring, where you can go to them and say, hey, I've just had a crappy day. Hey, I fell short this week. Hey, I just really need someone to love me right now. And you get that by going out and actively seeking that community. You should be chasing that community just like you chased your hurt, habit, and hang-up. Because while your relationship with God is first and foremost, this one will help you keep that on the right track. Corey's talked about, how important our group is, our leadership group is to him, and it is so important to me too, because even tonight I walk in there and I said, listen, I have business to discuss, but I don't want to do it. And he said, let's not. We're not going to do it then. And there are weeks that we go in there and we say, hey, this week really sucked, and I was a terrible mother. I was a terrible father. I was a terrible whatever. And then we get to talk each other through those things, and we get to, if we're having issues throughout the week, text each other, hey, pray for me, this is happening. And it's not a thing of something shallow where if I say, hey, I'm going to pray for you, and you're like, okay, cool, it's just like saying good luck. No, we know that we're going to do it for each other because we love each other so much. And I have that community outside of my groups as well. You have to strive to get those people in your life that are going to breathe life into you. They're going to pray for you. They're going to sit in your stink with you, because that will help you so much along the way, especially when the situation is a hard conversation, especially when you say, oh, I did something wrong this week, and they say, okay, well, how are you going to remedy it? Instead of saying, oh, no, I'm sure you're fine. No, how are we going to fix it? What are we going to do? Yeah, you probably did step out. You probably did screw up. How are we going to fix that now? What steps are you taking now? And not just, oh, you're fine. You did fine. It's okay. I'm sure it's okay. Because you don't need that, right? There's a quote by P.T. Barnum, I believe, that says, and this is not on my stuff, so I'm trying to pull it from memory. For those of you who don't know, whenever I'm an external memory for like 30 people, don't have much of my own. But it says, comfort is the enemy of progress. And having that community that is not afraid to say, fix your crap, do it again, is so important. Because if we don't have that, we don't grow. So get in a group. If you have a group here, great, go to that group. If you don't have a group here, please come talk to me, Corey, or Ryan. We will get you in a group. We will find the best group suited for you. And if you try a group this week and you hate it, come back, try a different group next week. Not all groups are for you. Not all groups are for me. Go try groups out. On top of that, get a group outside to celebrate. When Ryan and I first started coming, I think we were in like 4 groups. I don't suggest it. But we just could not find a great fit for us. And so we said, let's take 4 okay fits and call it a day. Again, I don't suggest it, just try different groups. All of our group leaders here are very understanding, and they know if you don't come back next week, but you went to somebody else's group, they're like, okay, cool, great. How you liking it? Awesome. If you don't like it, let me get you to somebody who can help you find another group. Okay, we're super understanding, no shame here. That's all I got for you guys. So thank you so much. You guys can go to group.